Peace, and welcome to the rematch. I'm really excited for this episode. I haven't spoken to these brothers in a long time. This is the executive director of the union while I was there, Mr. Billy Hunter, and Theo Ratliff and Maurice Evans. We were both on the executive board together and really played a key role in the 2011 lockout. But how's everybody doing? How's everybody doing, fellas?
All right. Great, man.
Good. I appreciate y'all coming on. You know, and I just to give a quick little background for our listeners. You know, I was watching the WNBA All-Star Weekend and saw the players take their stand. You saying they all wore their shirts together. Pay us what you owe us, and I thought it was great. You know, I love everybody doing something together. Mr. Hunter, you remember during one of the negotiations, you had all the players come in, and we all came in and came into the negotiations in New York. David Stern's eyes was like this. Right. You know, I love when it's that togetherness. It's just yeah, it's beautiful to see. But then I started seeing the commentary and the coverage in the media due to them what they were doing to us, which was putting things out there that just weren't accurate. They just weren't true, and changing the narrative. And, you know, the NBA, WNBA, they're really good at controlling the narrative. You know, they started putting things out there like the players want, you know, the same pay as the NBA players, and they want to get paid what LeBron gets paid for. Nobody said that. You know, and they said, well, the players want this, and, you know, and creating the division and trying to say, oh, well, Caitlyn Clark's not really with all of them, but also I'm glad that she stood with them. So all the different things that they were doing, I've seen before. So I wanted us to get here together to talk about really just to really encourage them in the fight that they have ahead, because we've all been there, and also kind of warn them about the things that are going to come into place, because we've also seen, because they're using the same scripts. But I think it's great. I think at first we should start with some of the facts and some of the things that are put out there that aren't necessarily true. And one of them is that what the players are asking for and their purpose and for having their stance in this collective bargaining in the first place is not to try to get the same pay as the men. They don't want to get paid what LeBron gets paid and what Shai Gilgeous wants to get paid and Giannis and everybody. That's not what they're looking for. What they're looking for is a change in the BRI. Now, when we were in our negotiations, what was our BRI, Mr. Hunter? Our split? We was at like 60 something.
Well, at one time, at 63%. But I think in the last round of negotiations, they were trying to push us back to something like 39%, and that's when things got crazy.
Right. So in most of the pro sports, they're usually around the 50s, usually around that place of a split. The split for the WNBA, what the players get, is 9.3%. That is what they get. That is the reason for that they are saying that no, we should have a bigger piece of the pie. It's not that we're trying to get the number that the men get in the WNBA and the NBA. We want a bigger slice of pie. No professional sports team, organization is at a 9% split with the ownership. That just doesn't happen. So let's just start there, Theo, because I know we talked about it before.
Right.
And, that's just that narrative that keeps getting put out, and people keep repeating it over and over again. And like I said, we've seen that play before.
Yeah, I mean, like you said, we've seen it before. And like I said, with me and, us guys being on the board and going through things that we went to get to the point where they are now at the 50-50 split, when you look at the girls, I mean, they are the product. Without them, there's no WNBA. And that's all we kept saying to the NBA. It's like how we get less than what you guys get. And if we don't play, there's no game. And that's kind of, like I alluded when we were having the discussion before, how when Oscar and Bill Russell and all those guys stood up even back then and shut down the All-Star game. Was like, we're not playing. You know, y'all can't come to the table with us and give us a fair deal, even way back then. And from when I first started on the board with Mr. Hunter, way back when, 13 years ago, when we were in negotiations and we were looking at the amount of money that guys that they were making then was like, what, $4 billion was the BRI? And you look at what the TV contracts and stuff have come to now, that's the same direction the WNBA is going. They're gonna, you know, with them even signing a new TV deal. You know, they know, and the NBA owners and the WNBA owners know the amount of money that's gonna be made, you know, throughout this process down the line. They're looking at 50, 40, 50 years down the line on how big they can grow this thing and how much they can keep. And the women on the WNBA should be looking at it the same way. So the generations can go from generation to generation. As their kids come into the WNBA, they should be getting their fair share of BRI.
Mo, what are some of the biggest things that you hear out there? Some of the biggest questions just from the, you know, regular people who are looking at this and their first reaction, you know, or kind of the naysayers who they see the WNBA players, you know, wearing the shirts and wanting to, you know, be able to pay us what you owe us. What are the biggest, you know, criticisms that you immediately hear?
Well, the criticisms that I've heard is that they only play for 3 or 4 months. So, as you said, how can they get paid a significant amount of money if they're only playing for a short, you know, amount of time? And but I think where you actually started, and I think everybody's kind of touched upon it, is you spoke about narrative and misinformation, and
Right.
in a similar way, I think that's why we're all here. We're all connected through a bond that we had, and that we were in these private bargaining sessions fighting for the rights of the players and advancement of the game. And I think that just having Mr. Hunter here is something that should be acknowledged, because he went through 5 collective bargaining agreements. Theo stood by his side for a long time. Both y'all served on the executive committee much longer than I ever did. And even giving accolades to the late, great David Stern for allowing us to achieve this 51-49 split that we still have today, that's been extended and amended. I remember the narratives that you say coming out of our labor negotiations in 2011. Remember, everyone thought that was such a bad deal. They said, "Oh man, we got mollywop, we got just thrashed," because we went to 51% from 57% BRI at that time. And as Theo alluded to, it was 57% of a much smaller pie. Now you see $300 million deals. You see players continue to just really excel. Guys making more in 1 year than we made in our entire careers, and just seeing the game be at such a healthy place, and it's still going to continue to thrive, because being a certified NBP agent now, I know that we signed an 11-year, $76 billion media deal, television deal. I also know that the players are guaranteed to be paid out $50 billion over the next 7 years. So when you look at the WNBA, in my opinion, again, this is just my opinion, this is no facts, I really believe that they're going to achieve a much stronger deal. Don't know what that's going to look like, but I really hope that for their sake, that they can look back on it in the same way that we are looking back upon our deal in 2011 and say, man, I remember that we achieved such and such and such. Now we have, hypothetically, not just Caitlyn Clark, but a lot of the WNBA players are now achieving record contracts and just continue to push, you know, break through these barriers, because I have 4 daughters, you know, and I have a son, but having 4 daughters who are now watching the Skylar Diggins and Caitlyn Clarks and Angel Reese getting all them rebounds, and, you know, Asia Wilson. And my point is just me even knowing a lot of these players, because I'm like, we watched the WNBA All-Star game, like you said. And the first thing it reminded me of when I seen the shirts was when we did have the Take a Stand shirt, because I still have mine at the house now. So just wanted to acknowledge some of those things.
No, definitely. And it's interesting because another one of the criticisms that I keep hearing come up is when you're asking if WNBA players deserve more, the response many times is that the league isn't making money. That's what I keep hearing. You know what I mean? The league's not making money. You hear it on the news, you hear it on the Sports Center, you hear it on ESPN. They're talking about why. And to that, I say that people have to understand it took the NBA, and correct me on any of these facts if I'm wrong here, Mr. Hunter. It took the NBA 25 years to turn over a profit. And then it took them like 40 years to get a consistent profit. Sometimes they had good years, sometimes they didn't have good years, but consistently it took them a while. The NFL wasn't profitable for like 50 years. And in that time period, did the players' salaries go down? And the answer is no, they didn't go down. So it's when people are saying that, yeah, the NBA, the WNBA isn't making money. I point to the Golden State Valkyries, right? The new expansion team. And they were valued, according to Sportico, they were valued at $500 million. Wow. Liberty right now are valued at $420 million. So
crazy.
It's not like the league is just doing terrible. If they were doing that and it was a terrible investment, everybody's losing money, these billionaires wouldn't be invested in it. They wouldn't be expanding. They would be doing the opposite. They would be wanting to, shut down teams. The league is in a great place to have exponential growth. But the narrative right now is just that they're struggling, they ain't got no money, and these greedy players want to have more money, and the league is barely holding on, and they don't know how they're gonna make. And I'm like, looking at the numbers, I'm like, that's not what I'm seeing. But you keep regurgitating that over and over. And that's what I want to ask you, Mr. Hunter. They were doing that same thing with us during the lockouts. Now, I didn't see of all the lockouts going in the past, but in 2011, they just kept regurgitating things that weren't true. Like I remember saying about how the league is losing $1 billion. They kept putting out like a big number, like $1 billion. I remember Jeffrey Kessler was like, "Well, let us see the paperwork, let us see the books, because that's not what I'm having." And I remember they was like, "Well, we don't have to, show you the books. Just trust us. We're losing $1 billion." He was like, "No, I can't just accept that because you say it." But then you heard on ESPN right after our meetings. You heard the league is losing $1 billion, almost like verbatim what David Stern said to us during the meetings. You know what I mean? So how do you to put a narrative when the NBA is so good at controlling the narrative, Mr. Hunter? They're so good at what they do and having all of the media everywhere staying on one accord and one narrative. How do you fight that?
Well, today, unlike when we were there, 13 years ago, you've got social media, which I think can be used to help negate the messages going out through corporate media. And I think that what the players have to remember is that this is the first round of a 10-round fight, and that the power concedes nothing without a struggle. And so what they're going to have to do, they're going to have to make it public, which I guess they thought they were beginning to do it at the All-Star match when they went with the T-shirts, but it's going to have to transcend that. And so it's probably going to get ugly before they get a resolution, but I can assure them that the owners are not going to demolish the league. So it's just hanging in there and being determined to achieve what they think is a fair deal.
Yeah, no, I agree. And it's interesting with the narrative. Let's see if y'all remember this. So during the lockout, I write articles, things of that nature. And so I wrote one article, and it was kind of like in the from the perspective, of the NBA's perspective, and I cast them as being the greedy ones, the wanting to squash us and having to bend to the knee. And David Stern was so pissed at me, like he was so upset. I was like, wait a minute, y'all have 1 million articles all calling us greedy. Every outlet, ESPN, CNN, MSNBC, all, and they were saying, well, the players want this, and you had, him and somebody else say, well, we just want a fair deal. It'd be 50-50. That sounds like it's fair. Knowing that their 50 encompasses way more, that pushes it way ahead of 50, but they don't tell those details. They just
Right.
present it as the players just wanting more and being ridiculous and being greedy. And then they
Mhm.
show with Charles Speedwell saying, I got to feed my kids. And then they show up, you know what I mean? So they just
Right.
did a great job of controlling there. I had one little article, right, that told a different story, and he was so hot, like he was pissed. But
Yeah.
that just shows how much they want the narrative to be what they have a hand on. And when I'm
Right.
telling you, like as soon, like I remember leaving the meeting, turning on the news, and seeing them verbatim say what David Stern just said in the meeting.
Right.
Like, how they know it that quick? Like the meeting was just 5-10 minutes ago.
Right.
You know what I mean? But
Yeah.
that is just, that was always amazing to me, Mr. Hunter, how they do a great job of controlling the media.
No, you're right. But I think in this instance that the alternative media, social media, can set it because most people are not listening to corporate media as they once did. True,
Right.
the newspapers were out there, but the message is not getting across like that. I would probably be getting in touch with people like Joe Rogan and all these folk who have millions of followers on social media, and I'd be getting the message out like that. But we got to keep in mind that these are labor negotiations, and you
Yes.
get away from the old style of doing business. That's just the reality. It's going to get down low and dirty sooner or later in order to get a deal.
How important is it for the players to stick together? So I saw them on social media on the WNBPA site, their Instagram, and they showed a picture of all of them going up the elevator, like saying, "Okay, we're going to our meetings and everything." And so I commented and then I reposted. I said, "Hey, stick together. Whatever y'all do, y'all got to stick together. They're going to try to break y'all. They're going to try to pick one person apart. They're going to try to, offer what they're going to try to split y'all up in a whole lot of different ways. Stick together." How important is it for them to stick together, Theo, throughout this entire process?
I mean, it's very important. I mean, especially when you talk about, your future, with these negotiations. As you spoke about the David Stern thing when you wrote the article, the difference was it was a player. It came from a player, from your aspect. So they want to control everything. What they have now is they have the ability to everybody writing the same thing on a platform that goes around the world. They can create their own narrative on what they want things to look like because everybody know who they are. Mm-hmm. They don't know them owners. They know the players. Right. So now when you do that, and that's why it's so great for them at this point in time that they stay together. When they stay together, because, like I say, it's just billions of people on these platforms and all these podcasts. And I mean, it's different podcasts, like even your podcast, for instance, them coming on, saying their piece on your podcast. NBA can't control that.
Right.
So it is wide open for them to create the narrative. And you can go back to when they had the George Floyd and the Black Lives Matter and how they stood. It's got to be that same type of energy, and they'll get what they want.
Mo, what do you think? How important it is for them to stay together? Because it was really it's so key to me about this entire process because I know their strategy. But how important is it for them to stay together?
No, I think you guys have already kind of stated the obvious and have made great points. Theo and Mr. Hunter, I think one of the points that Mr. Hunter made is that, while narrative kind of matters, for one, this is a business like any other business. How many years do you come out and try to report record, earnings, right? You try to suppress value and you try to suppress earnings and you try to maximize, in ways that you can. And now that I've been in the business world, and transition outside, still in the business of basketball, but now I see why they were coming in, as you said, reporting $1 billion losses, trying to, push losses to maximize returns and things of that nature. So I think it's one of those things with when you say quote unquote narrative. But as Mr. Hunter said, now individuals have platforms. We just spoke about your platform with the podcast, as Theo pointed to. You know, the fact that now these players have been able to monetize their name, image, and likeness in college all the way to the WNBA. Many of them are probably making more money on their social media platforms, the individual platforms, than what they're even making right now. When I remember when we were playing, WNBA players had to go play in Europe or internationally for the other 7, 8 months just to even try to supplement their income. They're not having to do that anymore. I also think it's important to note that with the WNBA players, they've grown to a place of empowerment, meaning that for one, even the optics of trying to collective bargain against them, the NBA and WNBA can't just go knock them over the head and try to, play hard ball because I mean, for one, it's optics, negotiating
But
against ladies, and not to say that these ladies are weak in any way because they're very strong and they've played and put themselves in a really positive light. I just think they have a lot of leverage, and I think that
Yeah.
there's going to be a resolution. As you said, the league is expanding. I think they're in a really healthy place. They signed a new television deal. I think some of the narrative, because when you ask me what I'm hearing, everything I'm hearing isn't negative. I'm hearing that there's positive growth. I'm hearing that, fans are really excited. I'm hearing the fans are selling out. When we go to different places around the country, I thought it was really cool seeing Caitlyn Clark, at the NBA finals supporting, Indiana versus OKC. I was excited to see that there were two small markets in the parity that we fought for back in, again, just the one labor negotiation I was a part of, 2011, to see small market teams being celebrated now. And then SGA, small market superstar with a really awesome team. I like to see how they were able to build that roster with all those draft picks that they got from different people like Serge Ibaka being traded, or
Yeah.
George, Paul George being traded, and that draft capital, all that type of stuff. So my point is, I think that the WNBA, from a not just a revenue perspective, because I believe the revenue is obviously they're far surpassing just the entertainment value. The entertainment value is actually starting to catch up
Yeah. For sure.
with their actual real value. So those are some of the things that I see at times.
I definitely agree. You mentioned in Caitlyn Clark, but one of the things I do also see is that they're planting the seeds of division really early.
Yeah.
And like I said, my antennas go up. I'm like, wait a minute, I've seen this before. Because so with us, it was always trying to have the division between the haves and the have-nots. You know what I mean? The upper echelon of NBA players, and then you have the lower end of the spectrum, and then you have the middle ground. And they kind of try to separate the two and talk to the guys at the upper, like, okay, well, you shouldn't have to give up this and this for the people. That was just a strategy. What I see them doing now is kind of putting Caitlyn Clark to the side, saying, okay, well, you're different, and you should have special privileges, and you shouldn't have to do whatever and then kind of like the narrative is like, oh, they're jealous of you anyway. So they're all jealous of you. So you should have to look out for yourself. And so that's why it was so great. And I got to tell, look right at the camera, Caitlyn Clark, it was so great that you stood with everybody else and had the shirt that said, pay us what you owe us. And you stood with it. Because the first thing when they had the picture in the elevator, everybody was like, well, where's Caitlyn Clark? Caitlyn Clark's not with them. Oh, so Caitlyn Clark's not staying with. And you just saw that just spreading. I saw news people saying this. I said, oh, well, Caitlyn, they said, oh, well, Caitlyn Clark. I was like, wow, y'all are starting that. Listen, I guarantee you, if there is one person who they're going to try to pick out and separate from everybody else and offer them something else or get them to try to go, is going to be Caitlyn Clark. They're going to try to Derek Fisher, Caitlyn Clark. 100%, that's going to be what they try to do, because I've seen this before. And that's just a ploy that I know that they implement and they utilize, and I've seen it work. Mr. Hunter,
let me say one thing. Let me say one thing to that point before BH goes. One thing that I think I love that you're pointing out the all the divisions and the narratives, because I think that I just wanted to simply applaud how the WNBA, how the ladies have been so intentional about quickly trying to separate from those narratives. Meaning that, remember when Caitlyn Clark first came in, she's in her in it's her second year, right? This in her second year, yeah.
Yes.
And so when the Angel Reese thing happened, remember when the rebound, she pushed her and everybody was on there. I didn't like those narratives that I was hearing during that time, but what I keep seeing them is they keep rising above those narratives and say, man, we're not going to distract from the game with this singular play or this incident right here and let that continue to be the dominating narrative. And so I believe in the same way, Etan, these women are smarter than what they're giving them credit for. They're realizing, and that's why I think they were intentional about making sure giving Caitlyn an opportunity to choose her narrative and how she wants to either support or not. And I think she chose correctly to authentically come in and say, hey, man, I'm going to ride with these ladies and we're going to come in here and try to push this thing forward as a unit. So I think those are some of the things that I see as well. But go ahead, BH.
Yeah, awesome.
No, 100%. And let me even add to your point. Throughout the whole season, with the narrative that everybody is jealous of Caitlyn Clark and WNBA players don't like Caitlyn Clark, the media kept pushing it over and over again. Do you remember when Dejanay Carrington, she fouled her? She tried to contest her shot, poked her in the eye.
Right.
The media, I saw multiple articles, and it's not just Jason Whitlock and Charlie Kirk and some of those hacks. It's just actual media on ESPN, on SportsCenter, using language like Dejanay Carrington attacked Caitlyn Clark or
we're not playing basketball.
Or they would say stabbed her in the eye. I'm like, whoa, why are you using these inflammatory descriptions of a foul?
Yeah.
But then Caitlyn Clark was like, no, that's not what happened. It was a regular foul. There's nothing to see here. And then it quieted the whole thing. You know what I mean? And that's a lot of power and that's a lot of pressure for her to have to always do that. But they're trying to utilize her and weaponize her in a way that is so apparent. You know what I mean? Anybody with eyes can see it. And there's multiple examples of that. And it's when you see it happening, I kind of see what it's formulating. And then you see people like Dick Vitale and Christine Brennan, and then still pushing the narrative. All the players don't like her. All the players are jealous of her. All the players, and this is Dick Vitale. You know what I mean? Everybody, it's not like Dick Vitale is like Tucker Carlson or somebody over here. It's Dick Vitale. So you got to ask yourself, why are they pushing this narrative so much? Like, why are they really trying to separate Caitlyn Clark from everybody else? Like, what is their strategy?
Because they all have a vested interest, all of these pundits, and they're all connected to the mothership. And so they earn their living by playing cadence to the NBA and the WNBA to the power structure. But you guys have touched all the hot buttons as far as I'm concerned in terms of how you describe what they have to do. The playbook is the same that they've always knew. And I think the insight that you're providing is right on. What they have to do is stay together. The superstars have to stay together with the body. As long as they can't separate the superstars from the journeyman players, they're going to be all right. They're not going to be up. The future plan is to go international along with the NBA and be the child of the NBA. So they're not going to let it fail, because that would be a blight on everybody. And so that's not going to happen. And these ladies just have to stay determined. And if they stay determined and they stay together, keeping in mind now, this season is going on. So it's not like we're going to disrupt the season unless they decide to do something crazy during the next 2 months or so. But the reality is the fight's going to continue over the winter in the next season. They then have to decide come next season, do they not play? And I think that's what it's going to come down to.
One of the things that he was able to do, Mr. Hunter, is, and I don't think a lot of people even know the details of it. And Mo referenced a little bit earlier. A lot of the things that current players are able to enjoy beyond just the salaries that current players are able to enjoy is because of the things that you implemented during the negotiations. After everyone was saying, "Oh, the players got hosed, all this happened," I was like, "Well, y'all don't know some of the details." Like for instance, now all retired players in the NBA have healthcare coverage. that it wasn't always like that. It's not like that in NFL. You know what I mean? The NFL players are struggling after 3 years. I mean, a lot of times when you see, NFL players having financial issues and everything like that, it's not that they squandered their money or they just was mismanaging things. It's medical expenses that are piling up because they don't have any coverage and the NFL doesn't cover them. You pushed for that to be something that that is changing because it wasn't always like that.
Theo.
Go ahead.
No, I think that was Maurice.
Oh, that was Mo.
Yeah.
And then another thing I remember that you also pushed for, and I want you to speak to this as well. Teams can't hoard money the way that they used to, the way that the Clippers and Donald Sterling like to do.
Everybody here?
Any money. Teams were hoarding money and not spending money. The Clippers, in particular, Donald Sterling was running it like a slumlord.
Right.
Where he didn't want to. I mean, that's a fair analysis, right?
That's a fair analysis.
And he didn't want to spend any money and spending the very minimum that he possibly could spend. I mean, they were like practicing at like the YMCA and stuff like that. It was real minimal. And then you changed it to where, okay, y'all got to spend at least this amount of money or at least this percentage or something like that. And now teams can't hoard money the way that they did. Talk about some of those things that you were able to implement that changed the way that the NBA moving forward, and now players are really able to experience the fruits of your labor.
Well, we didn't get there without a fight, and it indicated we went through something like 4 lockouts, and one is when we decided I convinced the players that we should file an antitrust action. And I think when we did that, the owners just said they just couldn't believe that we would take that kind of action that would bring the league down. And so we were engaged at the time in litigation. And David reached out and asked me if we wanted to get together and try to make a deal. And I said, yeah, I agree. And I know that Mo was there that night that we did it. As a matter of fact, it got kind of cantankerous because I think it was Mr. Stearns or David and his wife, was their anniversary. And so we were there waiting to initiate the discussions, and it just dragged on. And I threatened to leave and take Mo and the others who were with me and go on about our business. But I remember Peter Holt convinced me that we should stay and wait for David to show. And we did. And what happened was we were negotiating into the wee hours of the night. And finally, as happened in the past, David would say to me, let's go take a walk. And so we went out, he and I were walking the halls, and he was telling me what he had to have. He said, I got to have 10 years because the NFL owners just got 10 years. And so my owners want 10 years. And I said, well, we've never done a deal beyond 5 years with an option. And he said, but I need 10 years. I said, because you need 10 years. And what I need to have all the teams who are spending money. It can't be, we've got 5 teams who are prepared to spend. So when players become free agents, nobody can get paid because those 5 teams are kind of they're full. They don't have to bring in other players. And so what I want a guarantee that each team has to spend up to 100% of the team cap. And so, we went back and forth. I said, no, you want 10 years. That's what I want. I want to make sure that every guy, when he becomes a free agent, he's got a chance to make money, to get paid. But he says, well, I can't do 100%. I'll do 90%. That's okay. You got a deal. I'll do 10 years, 80%. And so that was the kicker, because now and the understanding was that any team that didn't spend, they had to give the money to the union so it then allocated. But once he agreed to the 90%, I said, well, we're over. We got a deal. And I knew new TV deal. And I told guys, people were upset. I said, listen, there's a new TV deal coming. We got all of these different networks competing for it like never before. And this money is going to grow exponentially. So we obviously came off that 57% that we'd been receiving. And we came up from the 39 that they were pushing early on. Because I always said, I'm not falling on the sword for the owners. I represent the players. The players pay my salary. That's it. I'm committed to the players, which I've always been. So I said, we'll do the deal. If not, then we lose the season. we ended up striking the deal, and this is the deal that the players currently have, where the teams have to spend 90% of the BRI. They can't get around it. If they don't spend it, then they have to give it to the union to allocate it.
And I was thinking about different meetings that we've had, and we'll be thinking one way, and then all of a sudden it sways the other way, and I'm like, wait a minute, that was done intentionally, you know?
Yeah.
And if y'all remember, there was a time when I got a little bit of wind because my agent was Arntellum. And my agent, we was going back and forth because the agents was way too involved in everything. That's still my opinion. You know what I mean? They were hurting a lot more than they were helping. And my agent Arntellum was the head of it, so I have no problem saying that. But
Detroit.
Yeah, right. No, I have no problem saying that. And I told him that myself. So we was going back and forth. And he kind of let it slip out. He didn't mean to, but he said, yeah, you got one person that's on there that is, on the tape, that is, being promised this. And I was like, wait a minute, what person are you talking about? And he said, well, Derek Fisher. And they started telling him all this stuff and getting well, there's a reason why they know everything that happened in your meetings right after the meeting happened. And this is what Arntellum was telling me. And so I called a meeting. If y'all remember, I called a meeting. I was like, hey,
I remember that.
This is what I heard. We need to meet in New York right now. Okay. So what I see and when I keep making the references, because a lot of people say, well, why you keep saying that about that? Listen, this is what happened. I'm not making it up. I saw it with my own eyes. It's not hearsay. And they are going to try to do the same thing with the WNBA. And I think the person who they're going to try to Derek Fisher is Caitlyn Clark. You know what I mean? And they're going to set it up to them. But talk to me about Mr. Hunter, because I've never asked you this on air. We have, a lot of people don't know what happened, but I think they should know.
I actually, when Theo was there, I actually got the word from Stephen A. Smith. That's how I got the word. Stephen A. Smith gave me the word. I said to me that there's a mole in your camp. And he told me that the guy is right next to you, and he's been negotiating with the owners behind your back. You have no idea what's going on. And as fate would have it, he then told me who the person was. And, I confronted him. And then it got crazy during the rest of the negotiations. I think I also brought it to the players' attention. I know I brought it to the Theo's attention.
Yes, sir.
He was engaged in negotiations, and we confronted him. And in a way, he had kind of admitted that there had been discussions going on. I guess it was he, Kobe, and Rob Pelinka, who had been interfacing with the owners.
Right.
But I realized that when I decided that we're going to do an antitrust action, that was the coup de grace for me. And so, but it worked out. It worked out for the players. So I feel good about that.
Yeah, and even going back to, us being in 4 years of collective bargaining, just and them saying that we got our butts wiped. Yeah, we knew every time what we were doing, we were gaining what we were trying to accomplish for the entire league.
Yes,
as far as the players, because like even when he talked about when Patrick Ewing and those guys, Alonzo and all those guys, Michael, when all these guys was with David Falk, going through that whole negotiations where it was the haves and the have-nots. You had 60% of the league was making the minimum salary.
That's correct.
You know what I'm saying? So with us being on the negotiations, I think Sam Mitchell, Mike Curry, all those us guys, knowing that we were in that echelon of negotiations, we were adamant about we can't grow the league and people making 250,000 and you have other guys making 30 million.
Yeah.
And there's no in between. And that's how we came with the, like I said, the different aspects of the mid-level exceptions and all these different things. And we knew it would just grow as the league grow. And we knew the new TV deal was coming.
Yeah.
We knew once that TV deal hit, the salaries would go where they are now, and they're going to go even far beyond that because it was going to become an international sport. And that's the same thing that's going on with the WNBA. And fortunately enough, we started at 63% because the guys before us had already fought for that, to make sure that they got the fair share. And the same, they're taking the same MO that they used to start the NBA, and now they just know it better. So they put them at such a low percentage to where it's harder to go up than it is to bring them down.
Yeah.
And that's why I used looking at a 9% revenue share. And it's like, y'all gonna have to really, really fight for this, because like Mr. Hunter said, it's gonna be blood, sweat, and tears before they do a deal that's gonna even come close to what it is that you're gonna deserve.
But let me get to this strategy as far as the divide and conquer and the getting different, because it's not just Derek Fisher that happened with before, right, Mr. Hunter? There's other people in different examples. So even when everybody's heard the story of Charles Oakley stepping to Barkley, that was in the negotiations, wasn't that? If I'm mistaken, and that was
in. We had come together for a review to update the players as to where we were. There had been an offer made by the NBA, and so we called a general session for players to come in and decide whether or not it was acceptable or not acceptable. And that's that incident occurred.
So so walk me through that. Like, what happened? I know Charles, because sometimes you got to stop it where it is, but he was going against what y'all were doing, or what happened?
I don't know whether that was with the case of Charles.
No, I mean of Barkley. Like, he was going against what y'all wanted?
No, I don't think it ever really got that far, because all of a sudden they're there. Charles Oakley shows up. Charles Barkley is there. And next thing I know, somebody throws a punch.
Right.
And somebody leaves the room. And then I said, what was that? And Oakley said something about, every time I see you, I'm gonna kick your ass, something like that.
Okay.
They must have a little bad blood, man.
They must have a little bad blood. Something else. But also, I remember when Karl Malone had to check his own teammate John Stockton, because he was kind of trying to get y'all to go a certain direction, right?
Yeah.
That was in Las Vegas, and so we had a core group of guys that were phenomenal. I mean, Patrick, you and Sam Mitchell, Michael.
Yep.
All of these guys. Theo was there. Theo was there on
Right.
the board for 14 years.
Right.
Years, and I remember when David Robinson came in. There, two guys who were perceived to be very conservative: David Robinson and Karl Malone. And David Robinson got up in Las Vegas and made a speech that blew everybody away. He talked about the whole, did a sort of monologue on the civil rights movement and act of the civil rights movement, and that he had just come from a trip with his mother where they had gone to the Civil Rights Museum somewhere in Tennessee or someplace like that. And then Karl Malone, who historically had a reputation for being very conservative out there. I mean, all of a sudden he caught fire. And so when you had he and David Robinson making speeches, Karl Malone, and then Alonzo Mourning even. I mean, it just pushed it over, man. And then, Patrick was very strident. I think that's probably why Patrick doesn't have a job today with the NBA.
Right.
That reputation for being strident, because you ultimately have to pay a price. There will be some of the women in the WNBA will pay a price for future, by putting a structure in place. But people wouldn't be investing in the WNBA like they're doing if they think this thing is set up for failure. It's not for failure, and that's what the women have to understand. And they have to stay together. And Caitlyn Clark has to stay with Angel Reese and all them. Don't let them get caught up in the BS, because it's all part of the strategy, to keep them.
Yeah, the game is the game. But when it comes to business, you better be together when it comes to that business.
Yeah, and the game is global.
It's a
It's a global. Yeah,
Yeah, that's why I really wanted to stress it to them, and I'm gonna keep saying it over and over to them for y'all to stick together. Don't let them, Derek Fisher, anybody. Don't let them pluck anybody out. And I'm gonna keep saying it. I'm gonna keep using that example. That's the example that I saw. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
David used to always boast with me. He would say, "Billy, I know everything you're going to do." He said, "Because I got my people in your camp." He said, "Oh,
you knew when certain guys were showing up."
He said, "No sooner you say something, I got it." And I said, "Well, it's what it is. I just had to deal with that,
That's what he told you. He told you that he.
Yeah, he told me. He said, I got my people. He said, I know everything that's going on every time you plan or something. I'm aware of it. He said, because I got my spies, players who report to me. That's exactly what he told me.
Yeah.
That's
and to that point, even when every time it came down to, like, when we got locked out, we played 50 games in the season, just like Mr. Hunter spoke to about him and David taking a walk. It always boils down to a small group that ends up getting the deal done. You're not going to get it done in the normal collective bargaining where you're going to have all their owners on one side, all the players on one side, and everybody just posturing, going back and forth with each other. It's always going to come down to who they respect to actually go in and make the deal happen at the end of the day. And then you come back and bring it back to the body and everybody, and it goes back and forth. And it's just a continue. We remember all the summers that we spent, in New York in the negotiation rooms and going back and forth. But at the same time, it was a pleasure being in that position because you got to see how these billionaires operate. You got to know these guys and get to understand what their business really was. This was like their little toy back then. It was just a hobby for them. But then you had these multi-millionaires, billionaires and all this stuff that own these teams. So they're about their business. So the ladies have to be about their business.
Yes.
And like I say, this could create such a generational wealth for them and a foundation for the WNBA to continue to grow, just like the NBA has grown.
The WNBA is on fire.
Yes, it is.
I mean, they've got the combination. They've got a replay of Magic and Bird.
Yep.
And Reese and all these players, and they have the right mixture. The thing is, it's a success. It's going to, and the ladies have to continue to believe that and just insist that they get their fair share.
Right.
Well, I'm glad that we came and we talked about this, and offering them support and rooting for them, and warning them about what they're going to see, because like I said, they have the same script, so they are going to try that. But we really want to see them succeed. I'm taking my daughters to the game tonight, to the Mystics games tonight.
Awesome.
It's a growing and fun league. I remember back in the day when I first came to the Wizards, I would go and watch a talented group of women. Shamika Holtzclaw, Nikki McCray, what I mean? Chelsea Melvin, all of them. Muriel Page balling, but they were balling in front of like half-empty arenas. You know what I mean? So, but now you see the arenas are packed. Like it's not like that, and it's the energy and everything like that. It's like, this is really taking off in an amazing way, and it's only going to get bigger. So they stick together, keep pushing for what they deserve, and they're right. The WNBA does owe them a much higher percentage than 9.3. 9.3, that's insulting. That's like absurd to be at 9.3. So I appreciate y'all taking the time to come on the rematch. Shout out to Mo. I know he had a bad connection, but I appreciate the discussion. And Mr. Hunter, let me just say to you, I have so much respect for the sacrifices that you made, even if you're not told of the appreciation from the full body of NBA players. I'm going to say, and I'm going to always say this, that the way that you were pushed out was completely wrong. and it was completely ill-informed, and it was manipulated by the NBA and with Derek Fisher, who was the head of it,
Right.
and it was orchestrated, and that was their strategy to do, and it was wrong. And I just want you to know that the sacrifices that you made, what you pushed for, what players are going to be enjoying for generations. Like I said, right now, my whole family is on my medical coverage, so my kids
Right.
like that. I think that they're under. That's stuff that you started implementing. It wasn't like that before. I remember David Stern saying before, he was like, "Well, they can just go get jobs after they play." I'm like,
right.
I remember him saying that.
Of course.
So yeah, I know people, want to talk about somebody in glowing terms, but there's certain things that I remember that are kind of stuck in my head. But you always fought for us, Mr. Hunter. You always fought for us, whether it was in, going toe to toe with David Stern, going toe to toe with their lawyers, while they're trying to talk around and use all these different strategies. You're like, no, whatever y'all are saying, this is what we're sticking to.
Right.
I appreciated you standing on business with us all the time. So I just wanted to say that.
It's funny, you kind of resurrect some memories here, because I can remember when David once said the brothers ought to be happy to make $5 million a year, and I said,
right,
you're making $22 million, and you know about
exactly.
all. But I mean, look, God is good, all right, and it's
all the time for sure.
Sort of like the story of Joseph when he was sold by his brothers,
right.
Slavery down into Egypt, and he later meets them at another time in their lives, and he says to them, what they meant for evil, God meant for good. And so even though I got out, the deal comes back to bite them in the ass.
Right.
They got to pay all these players now.
Right. Hey, well, like I said, thank y'all for coming on. Much respect to both of you. Hey, Mr. Hunter, we're gonna get together. I want to bring my family out to let's continue conversations. There's so much more we got to cover.
Right.
So we're gonna get together. And Theo, it's nothing but respect for you.
No doubt,
your family. I see your family doing great. I told you my daughters are inspired by your daughters because they're in volleyball, so they follow them on IG for the longest, and they root for your sons, and they playing great and taller than you. And
right.
it's just great to see. I remember being at the meetings, and my kids were a little younger than yours, and they looking up to your kids, and they're tall, and my kids are tall, but your kids were super tall.
Right.
So it was like wow, like look at them. So it's beautiful for us to see all of our families grow up and be successful.
Exactly.
It made me, so I feel like an old man. I'm like, look at our families, doing all good and stuff like that. So hey,
Theo and Christine are creating a dynasty, and so Theo, what you can do, you can look at it and say, what you did helped put it in place for your son. You didn't foresee that your sons would get the benefit of what you did.
Exactly.
Right.
Exactly.
100%.
Here it is.
100%. All right. Well, thanks, y'all. I appreciate it. Y'all be blessed, and thanks again for coming on.
Thank you. I enjoyed it.
Lovely, man. Pleasure, man. For sure.